That's the exterior. The interior is exactly like the traditional kit cars. It's a welded steel frame done by a kit car company, and all the other parts are off the shelf. The engine comes from BMW, the transmission, I think also BMW. You've got, I think this comes, I think the rear view mirror actually comes from a Corolla. Every other bit can be bought off the shelf. And you don't know this, but it's true of many industries, that the components, that the sort of the diversification of the supply chain means that these parts makers are not just selling to the big companies, they're also willing to sell to the secondary markets, the repair markets, and the amateur markets. The pricing may not be the same, but you have access to all the parts you need. So that's cars for you. That's the application to this model. And now they're going to start selling these next month. It's quite a cool model from a regulatory procedure. I know that we have some legal things coming up, but there are advantages to making cars this way. One of the advantages is that you have regulatory loopholes. There's something called so in an aircraft, there is a class of aircraft that follow kind of an experimental aircraft exemption that the FAA created, that if you make your own aircraft, 51% of it is created yourself, you don't have to go through the same testing and certification procedure. It turns out to be the same thing. Well, they think. It's a little fuzzy. This has not been fully tested in the course. But the interpretation of the DOT rules is that if you make 51% of your car, it doesn't have to be crash tested. Now, the engines are already EPA tested. They're 50-state legal. So the kind of the environmental stuff was cleared at the component side. But the overall car doesn't have to go through this extraordinary DOT regulatory process. Now, the corollary is that if you made 51% of your car, you are an informed consumer. You are taking risks with full understanding of those risks. And the same applies to things like liability, the guarantees, et cetera, that if something doesn't work, you're not going to be able to bring it to your local garage and have them fix it. That said, because you built it yourself in a special build center in Phoenix, where you spend a 3-day weekend doing this thing. You get a flight suit and a toolbox. It's really cool. You have to take the toolbox home, and I'm not sure about the flight suit. You drive the car off the lot after you made it, and you take the toolbox with you. You are now empowered to fix it yourself. So when something goes wrong, you're not going to go to the garage and say, it's making a funny noise. You're like, I made this car. I can fix this car. So it completely changes the producer-consumer relationship. It empowers you to take matters into your own hand and not only to fix the car, but enhance it. To think of ways, well, how can I make this car cooler? And because you now have a common platform for innovation, and you have access to a community and a channel, maybe you're not going to fix the car. Maybe you're going to invent a better shock absorber or whatever, and you can sell to the other car owners. And it completely changes the kind of passive-active relationship in traditional consumer goods. Okay, so that's the sublime. Here's the absurd. This last Christmas, my children's I have lots of kids, including some boys, and they're into Lego. And the number one request on their list, and, the two boys, they both had the same request, was brick arms. What are brick arms? If you are into Lego and you are a 12-year-old boy, the market failure is in heavy weaponry. Lego doesn't make sniper rifles. Now, Lego's a family company, and they have a strong preference for avoiding 20th century weapons. So you can have fantasy weapons, and you can have swords, but you try to avoid AK-47s. Now, not to condone AK-47s, even if they are plastic and this big, but my children wanted AK-47s. Now, that market failure is, in fact, a market demand, and what happened is that turns out there's a lot of 12-year-old boys who want Lego AK-47s, and this guy, Will Chapman, here is one of many entrepreneurs, or rather hobbyists, who said, well, I'm not going to wait for Lego to change their policy. I'm going to do something about this. And so he has a CNC machine, and he has a hand-pressed injection molding machine, and he has a computer. And he has SolidWorks, which is a CAD-CAM thing, and he just designed AK-47s with all these other weapons, and he CNC'd the mold, and then he hand injection the first 5 samples, or 10 samples, or 15 samples, showed them to other folks. They were pretty cool, thumbs up, and then he sent it to a local injection molding plant, and he makes tens of thousands of them, and there are like 40 other companies right now targeting niche demand within the Lego ecosystem. All the things that Lego can be, but that Lego the company won't do. And so he used to be a software engineer. He quit his job. He now has a very successful small business selling Lego weapons globally. And Lego is totally cool with this. They're like, we don't want to make AK-47s. So now Lego's working on what they call Lego API, which is a API on how to interface, how to work in our ecosystem. And this basis on some, it's like, look, we're not going to endorse your product. We're not even going to acknowledge your product. But if you are going to make products that you're selling to Lego consumers, here's the plastics to avoid. Here's some general guidelines about choking hazards. Here's what to say. Here's what not to say. Here's some general sort of how to sort of be a good citizen in the Lego universe. And that alone, saying, A, we're probably not going to sue you, but we're not going to promise that. We're just like, okay, just don't tell us too much about it. And B, here's how to do it right, is enough to create a vibrant ecosystem of micro manufacturers around a core industrial product. My own interest in this started, again, with my children and Lego. We were given Lego Mindstorms Robotics one year and sort of failed to do anything interesting with it. And they were given a radio control model airplane and crashed it immediately. And said, well, okay, we suck at both of these. What could we do that we could actually be good at? And we decided to let the Lego fly the plane. At that point, I went kind of down the rabbit hole, and I now run a quite large community focused on aerial robotics and amateur unmanned and open source unmanned aerial vehicles called DIY drones. The point is that we're making basically military and industrial stuff. We're making autopilots, drones, unmanned aerial vehicles in our garage because we can. So all that stuff about Alibaba, I know that because we do it. We designed circuit boards using Eagle, which is an open software. We lay them out on the PCB like that. We send them off, and they get fabbed. They come back like this. The regulators have no idea what to do with us. Autopilots, as you know, are regulated as weapons. But there's an exemption. Then the State Department's ITER export restrictions say that if you are to export an autopilot, certain things have to be done. You have to certify the recipient, and you have to have a 24-hour closed-circuit television on the autopilot. You have to have a daily log of where it went and who touched it. Okay, my 9-year-old created an autopilot out of Lego and sent it to his cousin in England. So you now have to visualize the State Department regulated closed-circuit camera on the Lego 24 hours a day to make sure that Lego didn't go anywhere. The absurdity is that technology allowed my child to do what the State Department considers weaponizing Lego. And I thought it would be, we talked about this in public because we were slightly hoping they would come to arrest us, so that I was just kind of fantasizing as a magazine editor, the fantasy of my 9-year-old being brought up, on charges of weaponizing Lego was too delicious to resist. Unfortunately, they were totally cool about it, and they thought it was very interesting. They asked a lot of questions, and they haven't yet to arrest us. And we work really hard to be open and transparent about what we're doing, so we don't do bad things. We do good things, and we inform the regulators about what's possible, so they can make wise choices.